Because the Soviet Union collapsed, there is more knowledge about the Russian microwave weapons program than that of the United States. In the 1970s, in lab experimentation, the Russians published the effects and their capabilities, which they described as the ability to suppress riots, the ability to disable opposing military forces, as well as the ability, using these microwave weapons, to enhance artificially the performance of their own soldiers and special operations forces. In 1972, the U.S. Army published a study, Controlled Offensive Behavior. This study of the Russian microwave weapons program stated that these weapons were being used to attack internal political dissidents within the Soviet Union. In the report, it stated that Russian dissidents were the targets of microwave weapons and anti-personnel devices that, quote, sought the total submission of one's will to some outside force, unquote. In other words, these anti-personnel weapons were being used for behavior modification purposes, in conjunction with the use of the Russian psychiatric community. Many of these internal dissidents were being attacked with microwave weapons, and when they reported these attacks, they were forcibly incarcerated in psychiatric institutions and forced to take dangerous experimental drugs that in effect destroyed them. In the 1980s, the Washington Post published the fact that the Russians had used microwave weapons to kill goats and other animals at a distance of 1 kilometer or greater. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the Russians began to cooperate with the United States in military liaison and civilian liaison operations between the defense departments, respectively. The Department of Psycho-Correction at the Moscow Medical Academy had perfected the ability to use acoustic silent sound or subliminal commands to manipulate the unconscious psyche of its targets. These were demonstrated in shared experiments to American non-lethal weapons experts such as Janet Morris, who worked closely with Colonel Alexander. Acoustic psycho-correction was proved to work very well and to be used upon individuals and groups without their being able to detect the fact that they were being manipulated. Their purposeful behaviors and their thought patterns were being corrected. Dr. Igor Smirnov came to the United States in 1993 from the Department of Psycho-Correction and met with representatives of the CIA, DIA, FBI, and other agencies to share the capabilities and unlimited potential of his new technologies using microwave broadcasts that hid behind static or white noise, and in effect had perfected the use of subliminal commands that could be broadcast at individual targets or at groups. Dr. Smirnov was brought to Waco during the Branch Davidian standoff with the intent of using his psycho-correction microwave technology against David Koresh. In 2005, Dr. Smirnov died unexpectedly of a heart attack, and his patent is now held by Psychotechnologies Corporation. Psychotechnologies Corporation is run by remote viewers General Albert Stubblebine and Major Ed Dames. Proof that these microwave anti-personnel weapons exist resides in the careers of dozens of elite scientists who have dedicated their entire lives over the last 60 years to developing these weapons, their scientific papers that detail their breakthroughs, as well as hundreds of patents directly and indirectly related to the use of these types of weapons on the human central nervous system. Some of these scientists were in effect utilized by the intelligence agencies without their direct knowledge, while others were full participants in unethical experiments on human beings. However, at this time, it is virtually impossible to distinguish between the two. Anyone's name who is cited here should be given the benefit of the doubt. The earliest study of the effects of electromagnetic fields on human behavior was done by Nicholas Tesla. The earliest papers published are about the time of World War I, approximately 1918, by Italian scientists who recorded the ability to make human experimental subjects see lights and colored visions. After World War II, the Cold War gave great emphasis to the use of microwave weapons, and these secret programs on both sides of the Cold War received heavy funding. Some of these scientists included Dr. Alan Fry, Joseph Shapitz, Joseph Sharp, Dr. Andrei Puharich, Jose Delgado, Ross Addy, James Lynn, Herman Schwann, Bill Van Bice, Eldon Bird, Robert Becker, James Lilly, and others. These men were funded either knowingly or unknowingly by the Department of Defense. However, they should be given the benefit of the doubt. Dr. Andrei Puharich studied the effects of radio waves upon animals at Northwestern University in the 1940s. Dr. Puharich was later employed by the Army Chemical Corps and Fort Detrick to develop biological weapons, as well as LSD studies for the military in 1954. He was also later employed at Sandoz and Permanente. Dr. Puharich perfected the radio tooth implant, a radio transmitter receiver that could be used for espionage purposes. Dr. Alan Fry was a researcher at the University of Cornell. He was also funded by the Office of Naval Research. Dr. Fry made major breakthroughs in 1958, and he published 2 papers: Microwave Auditory Effect and Applications, and Human Auditory Response to Modulated Electromagnetic Energy. Fry's work had major implications for covert operations. He was able to synchronize a microwave rhythm signal with a frog's heart and stop the heart from beating. In other words, Dr. Fry had perfected the use of heart attacks using remote microwave energy. In effect, a completely plausible way to assassinate one's opponents. Dr. Fry also discovered the concept of RF radio frequency hearing, later to become known as the Fry effect. Dr. Fry stated that the human central nervous system and a common table radio were 1 order of magnitude different in their sensitivity to radio frequency energy. He was able to bypass the human ears using microwave signals at a certain frequency, pulse, shape, that at very low power was able to transmit its sounds and eventually spoken words. These experiments were also replicated by Dr. Shapitz, who was able to do much the same thing with microwave energy. Dr. Jose Delgado came from Spain to Yale University in 1950. He was funded by the Office of Naval Intelligence. Dr. Delgado perfected the use of radio implants in the brain. His earliest design was called the stemoceiver. Dr. Delgado also perfected the means of remotely accessing the human brain and having a radio frequency link from brain to computer and back again. In other words, Dr. Delgado had perfected the use of a computer to automatically, in real time, give a response in stimulus effect to an EEG reading from a human brain, such that certain behaviors or certain thought patterns could be corrected in real time. This paper he published in 1975 was entitled Two-Way Communication with the Brain. Dr. Delgado performed unethical experiments on otherwise healthy human beings. By the 1980s, Dr. Delgado began publicly calling for the use of electromagnetic broadcasting to affect human behavior at a distance of 3 kilometers or greater. Dr. Delgado stated his philosophy in an interview in which he stated, "This new knowledge is so important that I think it will radically change the philosophy of our education system, which believes in the sanctity of individuals, thinking that an individual exists at birth. This belief is not true. This science will prove the fallacy of democracy in the sense that we talk about the rights of the individual. This democratic belief in democracy and the rights of the individual are not true."